All right, welcome once again to yet another webinar from Data Platform Geeks. And today we have Neil Hambly with us. We're glad we have Neil today. Neil, absolutely great to have you today. Friends, Neil has decades of experience working on analytics, AI, and in general working with data. He runs his own unit and is also a data platform MVP. And today's topic is Intro to ML with Azure Machine Learning Service. And I will hand over the stage to Neil just in a moment. And I'll take 2 minutes just to talk about the upcoming Data Platform Virtual Summit. And believe it or not, we're thrilled. It's just 3 weeks away, kind of. And this is the 7th edition of this mega virtual learning event on Azure Data Analytics and AI. And the focus I will spend 2 minutes just talking about the training classes because we believe the training classes are real picks. They're very reasonably priced thanks to our community speakers who agree to do these classes at such low cost. And also they agree that the classes get recorded and we can share the recordings with you absolutely free of cost, so to say. So yes, these are 15 classes that we have lined up for you covering a lot of technologies under Azure Data, be it machine learning or execution plans, AI, modern data deployments, managed instance, Power BI, DAX, big data cluster, PowerShell, SQL performance tuning, Synapse, SQL developer stuff, whole lot of these are 8 hours virtual class, 4 hours each day for 2 consecutive days. So, we spread across the training on 2 days, 4 hours each day. You get to attend live and you get the recordings too. And I'll take a moment to talk about this class, which is Mastering Azure Machine Learning Service by Neil himself. And I'm sure maybe before or after today's webinar, Neil will briefly talk about what exactly is he going to cover in his 8-hour class. Moving forward, friends, each year DPS has been very special for us. Our focus always has been on content, and we bring you freshly baked sessions. I want to take a minute and talk about what do we mean really by freshly baked sessions. In virtual world, it's very easy to see repeated content in conferences, but we try our best to get you up-to-date content, fresh content, and even if a session has been delivered previously, we make sure that it is updated by the speaker. I mean, as community, as a bunch of folks, team members, we try to put in our best efforts that so that we bring you the latest up-to-date, fresh content. So, well, with this, feel free to talk to your managers, get sponsored, pick up a training class. Remember, you get to join the summit absolutely complimentary with the training class. You get the summit recordings also. So all the 150 breakout sessions, you will get 12 months streaming access to the summit content, of course, free of cost. Also take a note of the discount code, which is SAVE20. It lets you save $20 on the training class ticket. Well, with this, over to the rock star, Neil Hambly. Thanks, Neil. Over to you.
Hey, thanks, Amit. It's awesome to be here. So I'm looking forward to the next hour where I can share with you some content around the Azure Machine Learning Services, the kind of data science capabilities inside of Azure. A little bit of background for those who have never come across me before. I'm just going to share my screen. So let me kind of quickly share the screen. And here we go. So hopefully you should see the screen in front of you now, which will be, let's kind of check how I can see some of the details in the screen. One sec. Cool. So here is a DPS 2021 training class, as I just kind of mentioned. This is going to be what we have in front of you. Let's kind of zone a little bit. All the modules that we are covering inside of this 8-hour training. So 8 hours, 8 modules. We're doing about half of it on day 1. The first 4 hours, then we're going to kind of switch over to day 2. But it's all about how do we use the Azure Machine Learning Service to create the experiments, create all the resources, say compute, choosing those algorithms, looking at kind of the design and the Python notebooks to be able to kind of get into the details. And we've got so much power inside of these technologies. We're going to be kind of taking you through how to build those. And we're going to do a little bit of that today as well with this intro. We're going to kind of whet the appetite a little bit about kind of what the machine learning service has. Now, normally I kind of do lots of slides for all the kind of trainings I do. So in my kind of a bio introduction, they were saying I've kind of been in the industry for a while. I have. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. So that means I kind of have the credentials to teach people along with the certifications and the exams. But I've got the experience. I've got the knowledge of actually doing this in real world. And what I do is I take that experience and I put that into my classes. And I'm really fortunate to be able to kind of have a class around data science. And I teach mostly Microsoft certifications like the DP100, which is kind of pretty much the aligned one for the data scientist associate certification. And we're going to be touching on a little bit of the content around that today. Okay, so let me go in and first kind of bring up the slides, just kind of very quickly show you what we have in front of us. But it is pretty much, let me just kind of show you, just kind of an intro slide. So just kind of, this is the session. It's called Intro to Machine Learning with Azure Machine Learning Service. So we're going to kind of show you how to provision, how to get access to all the resources that you will need to kind of get through and start creating those experiments. This is a background for me, say MVP data platform, been in the community since about 2009, 2010, running user groups, doing lots of presentations, over 400 different presentations in those years. I don't know how I fitted them all in and had my day job, I really don't. But I'm a founder and CEO at Beacon Intelligence, who are a focused data analytics, data platform kind of gold partner with Microsoft. And we spend our time kind of helping our customers kind of understand their data platform challenges and certification, how to train their team. So I love kind of that. Oh, and at the bottom, I like whiskey. So I do have a nice whiskey collection. You might just spot it in the top corner of the screen there. I've got a few of those in there. Now, generally I would have a few slides, but we're very short on time today. So we're going to go straight into demos. Now, I will be doing another session later in the kind of main conference. And that is going to be all around Azure Machine Learning Ops, ML Ops, machine learning kind of and DevOps combined, how to build pipelines, how to get your source control in place, how to build those experiments and deploy them to production. So I'm really looking forward to doing that one. So look forward to seeing you inside the main sessions as well. And of course, I'm really looking forward to doing my post-con. I do say it's a post-con. It's the 19th and 20th of September. We'll touch on a little bit more on that later, but let's kind of get into the main thing we're here today, which is the Azure Machine Learning. So I'll come back to the slide at the end now. So what is Azure Machine Learning? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through and explore. Let me just reshare my screen. Let's make sure it's kind of shared properly. Bear with me a sec because the dialog screen has disappeared. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So hopefully what you can see is the Azure Machine Learning Service, but kind of how did I get to here? How did I get started with this kind of machine learning service? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into what is the Azure portal. So let me kind of just bring up my portal.azure. And if you're not familiar with kind of the Azure portal, it's our way of a browser-based UI interface to connect to the Azure environment. And what I've done is I've gone in and provisioned up a machine learning workspace. Essentially, this is just kind of the area where I can go and create a kind of a zone to create all the resources, the assets I'm going to use. So what I did is I went in and quickly under create resource, I went in and wanted Azure machine learning. Kind of see if I can kind of type. And you see we got machine learning here. I'm not going to go through all the steps here, but basically I created a step here of choosing my kind of subscription, my resource group, etc. And what I ended up with is a resource. Let me go and grab the resource I want, which will be this one here. And yes. And this allowed me to launch the studio, which is the very studio that you're seeing in front of here. Now, because of the time it takes to provision and run these experiments, I've done them a little bit ahead of time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the steps I did and where you can get the same information to do exactly what I did to get us to here. And what we're going to do first, before we kind of go into all of that, I'm going to do a bit of a real estate tour about what's actually inside of the Azure Machine Learning Service. So first off, just kind of giving you a high up, I'm in a specific directory. And my workspace, which is the most important thing here, is the workspace I've defined. I've given it a name, Azure AMLWS, Azure Machine Learning Workspace, and I've given it a DA100. Now, DA100 is a course around Power BI, and I wanted to create some machine learning experiments for my Power BI kind of visualizations on the end of that. But I was giving it a name. I could name it whatever I like. And I could also, if I had multiple different workspaces, I could move between them here as well, okay? Now, what I've got then is on the left-hand side is I've got the main kind of canvas. We get it in a position. And of course, we start off in the home page, which gives me a high-level view and access to things like creating the resources like my notebooks, automated ML. So we're going to look at all of these very quickly during today's session, and designer. So we're going to look at the notebooks, the Jupyter notebooks that are allowed us to run things like Python code, import pandas libraries and scikit-learn, and ton of other kind of very popular libraries that we can run code in. I've done some notebooks already. We've got some sample ones in here that I'm going to share with you. I've done an automated ML, and that's I'm going to explore that a little bit later, but that's basically where we can say, look, here's my data set. I kind of know roughly what I want, and I've done a time series example, but there's kind of a regression and a classification example as well. And I kind of will have the ability to see who was the best in terms of the algorithms that we're choosing. So it kind of compares a bunch of them, runs the same experiment, gives the kind of some metrics, and then we can compare and contrast those and choose, okay, this was the best of that group. And it helps us kind of narrow in on which is the best kind of technology, which is the best algorithm to use for our specific experiment. And designer is a kind of drag and drop. We all like kind of easy to use, no code, low code options. We're going to show you how we also can build a few of those as well. So I'm going to kind of run through a few of the capabilities, but the first thing I want to do is go down and show you that we do have, sorry about the zoom in there, it didn't quite work on the first go, there we go, that we have some sections right at the bottom that are really important. Now, the first one, and probably the most important, is compute. I've got a number of computes defined already, but this essentially is where am I going to run my experiment? On what piece of equipment? So in Azure, I can provision up these VMs, different sizes, different capacities, memory intensive, CPU intensive, etc. And I can provision up these compute services, a single VM or what we know as a cluster. I'm going to show you those in a second. So this is where the code executes. This is where the experiments are run. Now, there's some environmental stuff. This is in preview, by the way. So kind of that just means that it's a fairly new addition to the Azure Machine Learning Service. And simply what it means is we can kind of define the specifics of which libraries and the characteristics of what that environment does look like. So we're going to explore that a little bit. Now, of course, data stores. Where's my data? Without data, data science projects don't really get too far, okay? So we're going to be able to store some data, or we can connect to external data. So you might have data in a database, in a CSV file, in Azure Data Lake Store, wherever that data might be, we might need to mount access that data. Again, with a kind of something like a notebook or an experiment in automated ML designer, we need access to that data. Now, some additional ones like data labeling and services, I'm not going to cover them in today's session, but they are covered in the post-con, okay? So when we have like 8 hours of content, I'm going to spend some time working on those as well with you. Okay, now once we've done the experiments and we have them kind of running, we're going to have these assets. So the data sets that we created or access. The experiments we run, that's very, very key. What pipelines we might have defined, what models we built from our experiments, any endpoints for any deployed deployments we have. So again, we're going to go into some of this content today, not all of it, just be the amount of time we have. And you can see kind of from here, I've got a few kind of recent resources being provisioned. I've got data sets that have been created and some machine learning experiments that have run here. Okay, so which experiments have we run? We've got a couple of ones there. Now, I will say right at the bottom, this is kind of one of my favorite parts of this kind of machine learning service, is that it gives you a whole bunch of learning resources right smack in front of you. You go right there where you need it. Okay, so tutorials, additional resources. So, if you're going to learn about machine learning, where do we come? Well, we come into this area here. For example, you might want to go and say, what is this link here? And that will take you to some of the kind of resources that we have. We kind of get to the first of those examples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you some Microsoft Learn resources that you can use to kind of step through and do the kind of same journey I'm going to showcase with you today. Showcase the machine learning kind of solutions. Now, what I'm going to show you is under Microsoft Learn, we have our data scientist kind of roles. And in there, we have, let me kind of just actually go into that one. So data scientist. And in here, I want to go down and I'm going to look at some of the learning paths. And I'm going to actually pick this one here. So the build and operate machine learning solutions. Which, and you see there's nearly 10 plus hours of content there. There's also a second learning path about some visual tools, create machine learning models, etc., etc. There's a ton of information here. If I click on this one, this will give you an excellent starting point for that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go into the link, and I'm going to post that directly into the chat window for you, just so you've got a quick link for you to look at later. Don't just go run off to it now. Pay attention. I'm going to show you all of some cool stuff in here. But what we can do is we scroll down a little bit. You can see that it's a number of kind of exercises. And the exercises themselves will probably take you to this link. And what is this link? Well, this is the kind of exercise and instructions for the DP100 course. The DP100 course is a 3-day instructor-led course. I deliver this one pretty much once or twice a month, at least. Okay. Now, if we click on that link, it's going to take you to this URL. Okay. For some reason, they like to use really small text. But you can see here, we have all the instructions about creating an Azure machine learning workspace, using things like automated ML and the designer, how to run experiments. Let me kind of quick look into the top one there. It takes you through step by step on all of the instructions you need to do, including cloning all of the repository information from that learning GitHub repo into, say, one of your notebooks or kind of folders, and you get everything you need. So this is an awesome kind of step-by-step instructions. So kind of, if I can follow this, then anyone can do it, okay? There's more information about things like the automated ML instructions and kind of how to do things. But let's kind of show you what that looks like when I've done it. Okay, let me go into my Azure Machine Learning Space. I'm going to go and I'm going to quickly go to the experiments. By the way, if you see these kind of areas, you can kind of minimize them, expand them, get a bit more kind of real estate space, etc. Okay. So let me go and start with the home. And I'm going to go into the first of the 3 sections, and I'm going to kind of walk my way through in this direction. So I'm going to start with notebooks. We're going to look at automated ML, and we're going to look at designer. Now I'm going to leave about 5 minutes at the end of the session for all those really kind of difficult questions about what you've seen, and hopefully we'll answer most of those. And if you don't get your question answered today, come and see me at my next session in the DPS, the ML Ops, so you see my name, you'll see it. And otherwise you can kind of reach out to me and ask those questions again. So let's start with notebooks. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the notebooks section. Just clicking on the link on the left-hand side here. And let me go and quickly show you what we have. So I have users I've got myself, which means if I've got my user account, I can add other users as well. Okay, so what I can do is I can have multiple people using this Azure Machine Learning service. It's a team kind of approach to working with data science. You and your colleagues will all kind of probably collaborate on doing stuff. So I can have Neil's folder. I can create new folders and add, kind of extra ones. I can upload files and folders, etc. Okay, what I'm going to do is if I go into samples, there are some built-in samples already. Now, if you want to use these samples, what you do need to do is click the little kind of ellipse to the side. And what we're going to do, sorry, wrong one, click on clone. So under samples 1.32, clone, and I did that, and I have the cloned environment. Okay, so I've got all of that information. Okay, I also kind of, if I wanted to, I can build my own Jupyter notebook. So here's one I did actually for a training I did last week, and I created a kind of piece of code that did pulled the data from a website and got the kind of historical financial kind of currency rates going back one day at a time, back to 2018. So kind of just scroll down a little bit, you'll see that we have the 1st of January 2018, and then I've got 2nd, etc. And I've got the top, I've got the 10 different currencies I'm interested in. And I run this code and it created the data set for me. And then that CSV file was processed by Power BI, Power Query that we have inside that. And I generated a table, a data set that I wanted to use inside of that. So I can build my own code. I can build my own Python structures. And if I didn't want to do that, I could just use some examples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the example. Let me close this one out. I'm going to show you the example that we have. Okay. So one of the great things also about Python, and this is, I really, really love Python. I teach it as well, is that I've run this, and you can notice at the bottom of each of these kind of areas, I've run the code, and you can see how long it took to run, but it also gives me the output. And I just reopen this file up, and I can see all of the information at the bottom of kind of after the run of what was there. So like creating my computes. It found an existing one because I created this on an earlier run. And I can see all the steps, I can see exactly what's done. And I get down to where I'm actually running. Then we kind of scroll down a little bit further, and we get down to this kind of area here, where I can actually see how long the processes took and what was actually run, and then kind of go through and see all the experiments. But where else can I see that? Well, I can just come over to my experiment area, and I can see all the experiments I've run. So let me kind of look at the, which one was this one? Hello World 1. It took 12.5 minutes to run. Okay, run that one once. Let me kind of go into the details. Inside of here, I can see all the steps. I can see exactly what ran, and also how long each one took, and details about those steps, and more information if I wanted to see more details. I can go and look at all the specific logs that we have for all of the activities. So I've got lots of information that I can kind of analyze. I can go and see explanations or kind of other capabilities, but this one specifically doesn't have anything in those areas. Let's go back to the steps for a second. I can go in and say, let me look at this training step. Let me actually look at what actually happened here. Well, I can see that this was the environment. This was the cluster it ran on. It's how long it took to run. And I can see the script that it was actually running, the python.py by means kind of a Python extension. And I can see all that information. Well, I can go and run and see what happened. But let's go back to the notebook, and let's see what actually was being run here. So in terms of kind of creating this, I was creating the, let me go to the Python script. Let's go up a bit, and we can see here, this is where the script is being created. And this is where the pipelines that were being used to create and execute on all that. So I can see exactly what I've done, how well I've achieved that kind of activity. And I can see which of the computes it's actually being run on. Okay, so I've got lots of cool information to share. You can see there's a whole bunch of different kind of Python files and environments like YAML environments. So all of the information I need was kind of shared in this kind of set of samples. Let's go and look at the other examples that we had. We had World 2, and World 2 was essentially another kind of follow-on piece of code where we had some additional training steps here. And again, I can go in and see all of the activities, and I can go and see maybe, let me go back to, sorry, World 1, I wanted to do that. There we go, and go into the steps for that one. Sorry, I did have it. There we go. And I want to go to training step. And in here, I got to, sorry, I want to go to details. You can see how long it took, which specific environment, when it was run, which data sets I was using, if there was an input data set, which scripts I was using. So if I need to go and see any of those details, I can go and find those very easily. But let's go and show you probably more of a visual way of kind of doing these activities. The notebooks are great. I probably prefer notebooks to anything. Reason being, it also works outside of the Azure Machine Learning. I'll just give you the notebook. Actually, if I give you a copy of this notebook, it's already got inside of that notebook all of the outcome of the previous run. So you can see exactly what I did and how long it took and kind of other information. But probably the key thing for me notebooks is these instructions. We kind of go into kind of this. So here, I'm providing that what's called a markdown. I'm giving you the instructions. I could put graphs and visuals and lots of other really cool stuff in here. And basically, I'm documenting the code and the activity and what's actually happening. Okay, so we kind of start right at the top. Oops, go back to the notebook. I do want to click that button. Let me click this one. So there we go, and go to the very top of that screen. We have exactly what we're doing in here. So what is the purpose? And then these sections here are the code sections, okay? So we have code sections, which are actually running the code. And we have Markdown, which is it kind of in there. So you can see I've got the code, I can look at that. But we do have also the ability to run it on a number of different kind of kernels. Kernel is the type of kind of code and which version of it, etc. So I've got 3.6 Azure ML code running here, but I've got the 3.8 version, and I could go and build my own versions, my own environment, and have that. Also have the ability to run something like R as well here. So many options here. Okay, all right. But I'm going to just kind of leave it on that. Now, I also have, and I won't show you this today because we don't really have time. Again, I'm going to go into more detail, especially in the post-con, about using Visual Studio, connecting to all these experiments, looking at results, sharing that in source code, all that kind of stuff. And I touched on that a little bit in the MLOps session as well. Okay, so we've got all this information, and if I want to kind of see kind of exactly what I've done and kind of the sections here, I have the ability to also kind of smooth that over a little bit. And this is the one thing that I do find is a little bit awkward. You can't move it easily. Cursor needs to be exactly in the right place and kind of get the cursor to. There it is. Do it again. Okay. There we go. Okay. You have to be really, really careful where you put the cursor. Okay. But here I've got the bread. Now I want to go to this, and I can now go through my table of contents. I'm not scrolling to try and find pieces. So one of the things I do is I kind of label, all they have is they've labeled the sections. Really cool way of kind of going through and kind of breaking that down, making it easy for kind of anyone to follow the flow. Okay, excellent. Okay. Notice we haven't run some of these sections because they don't have anything in this little box to the left of the code window. So if it's got a number in it, let me scroll up to show you some of the ones that do have numbers. Scroll up to, so the last section I got to was here. Now the reason why I stopped there because it did fail. And it failed because there was kind of a missing module and I didn't have time to go and kind of work out. I think this is down to the fact that I'm using a specific version of my library, and it probably needs the 3.8 version because we probably don't have in the environment I'm using the missing PySpark module. Okay, but if you want to go through, you'll probably be able to see that everything else has run successfully. I've got 25. Notice that it kind of stopped and dropped to 38. Reason being, I went back and forth a little bit. So these numbers actually represent where I was in kind of the number I executed. Okay. So cool, lots of information as well as lots of logs, lots of cool details. I can go and figure out what's happened in here. Okay. Now, we haven't got time to go into all the logs to figure out exactly what happens and rerun it. But I'm going to kind of show you that. Let me kind of just clear some of these screens for a second. And this is if I need to install certain versions of libraries, I usually just have an installs Jupyter notebook hanging around, and I can just put the right pip install and say, in this case, I wanted the HTML parser, Python 3 for that currency piece of code, because it wasn't installed by default in the environment. So I've added at a later time some libraries there. Okay, so we get rid of these for a second, and we're going to go and look at the other section, which is, go back to home, which is the automated ML. Now, what I'm going to do is I go click on automated ML, and I'm going to say we already have a library here. So this, by the way, is, let me get to clear that one. Where's that tutorial? Okay, gotta connect to which one it is. Where's the automated ML? Did I close it by mistake? Probably closed it by mistake. Okay, not to write. I will just close a couple of these because we don't want all these versions open. Okay, so let me go to this one. Okay, well, what I'll do, let me kind of walk you through the automated ML, because this is the kind of the experiment I did. Now, by the way, if I click on new automated ML, I can kind of go and select the same data set. I can go and create that data set. I will give you kind of just, if I can find it, where is it? So I probably, it looks like I had it open and closed. So it's in one of these experiments here. So I think if we go to this one here, use automated ML, and this has a similar example of that, creating the data set, and then going through and walking through the experiment. So let me kind of do a review of what we did, and then kind of show you later on. So first off, what I've done is I've created this experiment and I've run it, and it took 36 minutes ago. So it didn't take too long. I gave it about 1 hour maximum to run. So it ran within the time frame. And here we created a data set, or we downloaded a CSV. We stored that locally, and then I created a data set in here called byte number. Okay, now let me show you that data set. I'm just going to go and explore the data set. So I can go and view the data sets. I can go and view what's in the data. I've got a profile as well. So here's the CSV, 12 columns, 731 rows, kind of nothing too kind of exciting to view here. But let me look at profile. So profile now for each of the columns, and you'll see on the right-hand side, we do have some kind of capability to look at kind of things like the whisker plots and the histograms. Let me kind of look at one that actually might be a little bit more interesting. Months here. So here I can see that we've got some statistics. I've got the histogram. I go into specific data points. I can see the information about that. And also I've got kind of some stats about kind of the standard deviation, the mean, any error counts, any missing rows, any empty rows. So I can kind of understand the data to a certain level with the profiler capability. I can also create versions of this file. So think about, you've got an initial file, and then over time, that data is going to change a little bit. Well, I can create new versions, and then I can run the same experiment with the new version. And I can do a contrast of, well, how does that change the prediction, the outcome? What's the probability values now compared to what it was before? I can kind of do an analysis of that over time. Okay. I've also been to see, if I have them, I would have the models that this data has been used to deploy against. We haven't done any of that today because I haven't had time to go and do that. But I can see, if I want to run a bit of code in a Jupyter notebook, I just click on sample after I've done that, and I just copy the code and paste it in. Piece of cake. Awesome. Got it. Neil doesn't have to type. Neil doesn't have to get the information wrong. He's going to go copy, put it into there. Now, you know what? Let me just do that. I'm just going to go grab that sample, and I'm going to go into my notebook. I'm going to start a brand new notebook. So let's go and grab Neil, and we want to go and start a new notebook. Okay, so let's kind of create a notebook. We're going to do sample, and I'm going to paste in that piece of code. Okay. Notice that I need to kind of make sure it's connected to a specific compute. And what I'm going to do here then is, you can see here at the moment I need to save that as let's kind of wait for that to connect. And why is that not connected? Okay. Something went on there. Did I not save it correctly? Let me go. Oh, I'll tell you what I need to do. Create a, let's do that again. Okay. New file. And it is a notebook I want. Okay. Let me try example. Let's try that again. Okay. With the extension this time. Okay. Okay, so this one didn't have an extension. You see it's got the extension this time. Let me copy that code. Copy, put it into there. Now I got the cell. Okay, so I forgot the extension. It's important to note it. Okay, remember I've not put any markup down yet. I'm just going to put the cell in there. And if I run that cell, okay, it's now running. There's my data. It's as simple as that. There's no complexity. I can do it. You can copy as well. Okay, so great. So what I did is I created the data set and I went, okay, I just want to use that, put in code, and there's my data set. I can start using that data set quite quickly. Okay, let's go back to that automated ML. So I've got my data set, and what I've done, let me kind of just quickly step you through the steps, but I won't actually run it. I'll just kind of start the process so you can see the process. So I'm going to do new automated ML. I'm going to use that data set, click next. And here's what I get to do. I get to, once I have the data, I'm going to say, look, I'm going to use, let's try the existing one. And we want to search by column count. And we're going to use that existing compute. There we are. So actually kind of this one is create a new, and I'm just going to create a new experiment and bike compute. Can't spell compute. There we go. And this end we'll type in demos. Always type in demos. Okay, click on next. Now this is the piece. What type of kind of machine learning do I run about? So we have classification, yes or no, blue or green, kind of predicting the outcome. Regression, looking at continuous kind of prediction numbers, kind of working out what the historical patterns are and what the new patterns might be. Okay, but we probably would want to look at something like time series here, where we're going to kind of probably want to detect maybe for a 14-day horizon. And we also have kind of a lot of other options around kind of just suiting what kind of primary metrics. So the root mean square error, that's kind of probably the standard one we'd use. We might want to do a normalized absolute mean error or an R2. We can kind of remove certain algorithms like the extreme random trees or XG boost regression, etc. We get to work out how long we want to run it for in terms of hours. What is the thresholds? Any validation? We probably do a cross-fold, probably kind of, all this kind of information, and then concurrency. How many of these experiments do I run concurrently on my cluster? So that's going back to the compute, and I've created a compute that is, I think, a 12-node or 6-node cluster that I can run multiple kind of experiments at the same time, so I can kind of shorten the amount of time it takes me to run. Okay, so we've got all these kind of selections, and then when we're happy to go, we can kind of click on finish, and what will happen is that's going to start and run that experiment. This is all I need to do, look. And kind of frequency, let's kind of do order the tech, there we go, kind of that. That's now setting off and running that automated ML. Now that won't be finished for about 40 minutes. So it's going to be after we finish the day. But if I go and wait, kind of come back and look in a moment, I'll see that there's an experiment that's now actually being provisioned. And if I go in here and look at the experiment details, I can see that it's currently not started. We will see it preparing. We'll see it then running through when we look at this a little bit later on. So we've got a little bit of time left. We'll come back and look at that right at the end. But kind of, I want to show you the design in that, the piece of kind of capability inside of here, which is building out kind of this pipeline, connected pipeline, etc. Oh, and by the way, yeah, do the Q&A panel. Any questions you have, feel free to put those in, and then we'll look at the questions in that last 5 minutes there. Okay, so here's a bunch of examples. I've done an example already. I'm going to go and show you the customer relations. So this one here, where was the customer relations one? This one here. And let me go and click into it and show you what it looks like. Okay, so that's not the one. I want to go back to this one here. Oh, no, sorry. I want to go back to the main training. So we need to train the model first. And if I kind of just get this into view so you can see it, and let's kind of give us a bit more real estate here. Okay, that's a bit better. Auto zoom, cool. So each of these, we got a data set. So let's look at the data set. We've got a data set. We can actually look at the data set. Click on the various kind of sections allows us to drill into the various areas to give us our kind of view into kind of, no, it's not a great kind of data set to view visually, but we know 50,000 rows, 230 columns. Okay. Now, if I go in there, we then got additional steps such as cleaning missing data. So if we have data that's kind of not there in the data set, we can, in this case, replace it with, say, a 0. Okay. We can add in additional columns. We can add in extra capabilities to this data set. We will always split the data into a training data set and a test data set. So the test data set is going to validate how well the training was done and, you know, kind of what the outcome is. Now, notice if you look at my version here, and I kind of just trying to get it into the screen. There we go. Okay. I've got train model, score model, and evaluate model on the left-hand side. And I've got it also down here as well. Okay. So what I did, I've actually used a 2-class boosted decision tree algorithm and a 2-class boosted decision tree over here. But this one has got some additional kind of values changes. So they're just slightly different. I want to kind of see how this is performing. So what this is doing is we've got the kind of the training going on here, and then the testing is coming from here. Okay. So there's a kind of a training going via Smoot into the train model, or it's going directly in. So we're evaluating this section here, and then kind of go into what that is. Let me go and show you. We have the ability to kind of run a piece of code. So in this case, it's kind of a piece of Python code. And we can see exactly what was being run there and more detail. So I won't have time to go through the context of exactly what's going on in here. But, you know, if I wanted to see all those details, I can go and see the output of the data. I can see how well this data is being kind of analyzed and performed. Does Azure ML support deep learning? Yes, it does. We have specific deep learning algorithms. Let me quickly just share with you what that looks like a little bit. So let me go back to the algorithms, okay? And we do have, in here, we've got some of the key machine learning algorithms, okay? Now, if you want kind of a deep learning, we're gonna have some of the kind of machine learning algorithms here, but I would say probably what I'm gonna do, let me actually bring up the Azure machine learning cheat sheet. Oh, sheet, there we go. Okay, and we want to go to this one. Oh, no, that one, sorry, there we go. This one here. Okay, so what we have here is, and you can download this PDF. So you have a number of kind of different algorithms that are going to be useful here. Now, these are the kind of built-in ones to the machine learning service. If you want to use other algorithms that are outside of kind of the ones that they have, I use Python, and then I go and grab the specific kind of algorithm of my choice from the larger range of algorithms out there. Okay, but there are some deep learning algorithms inside of the kind of machine learning itself, but there are a number of those, and there's a how to select and kind of how to kind of go through and figure out, you know, what kind of algorithm I'm going to be utilizing. So here we've got the classifications, regression, clustering, etc. But, you know, notice that we don't have a huge number of any of these, okay? I would say that probably you're looking to do kind of more of a kind of a neural network regression or kind of those type of architectures. Then we can go into some of these, but there's a lot more than just the ones that you're seeing listed here, okay? All right, so let's go back and look at that algorithm, kind of the overall what we have. Oh, this one here. So we're going through and we've done all of that. And then what will happen when we're ready, we can kind of probably look at the kind of final evaluation results, kind of how well, let me maximize that, how well that data set scored in terms of the algorithm. What were the thresholds? What was the confusion matrix that we have? So we can see here, we got some really big numbers here, but some really, so this is the false, true positive, true negatives. And then we got the false ones here. So this is quite high. So we probably want to relook at that a little bit. We can see the scores for the groupings. So, this graph isn't very tight. We kind of want something usually kind of quite in the top left corner there again. So the receiver curve, the receiver operational curve, not very good in terms of this one. We'll probably want to come back and kind of rerun this experiment and change some of the properties. But this is kind of where we then probably run it through potentially AutoML in order to get kind of a series of different values to kind of figure out which parameters. So we then start using the hyperparameterization space inside of the machine learning to actually change those parameters and kind of work out which ones is the better one. Again, kind of keep an eye on time there a little bit. We've got about 12 minutes left, so about 7 or 8 minutes maximum on the presentation still. Okay. But if I kind of figure out exactly what's going on, let me go to kind of see if I got it here. Might not have set this up. Let me go to the real inference. So what I've done is I've set up a pipeline. I'm going to this very quickly. So here's the pipeline. And here's the kind of steps that it was doing on the classification, all the steps it's doing in terms of the algorithms, how long each took, which cluster it ran on, etc. So there's my range of individual computes. And I've got things like Jupyter, Jupyter Lab, Visual Studio Code, quick links. So if I click, for example, Jupyter Lab, and just log in. And this is now connected to my workspace. So all the data sets and all the other stuff I'm going to be utilizing will be inside of this. We're basically launching an environment here. So you can see here, I've got all of my kind of examples that I was having earlier. Okay. But if I open this up a little bit, go down to, where's the samples? There we are. There's a bunch of compute, classification, regression, automated ML, and some other examples there that you will kind of want to kind of maybe review. We were talking about deep learning. I think maybe it's in here. I'm not sure. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I think it's in there somewhere. One of these has a deep learning kind of example, I think somewhere. It might not be in these set of tutorials though. No, okay. But in here, I've got all of my kind of sections. I can also go and change all my kernels. I can kind of look at my assets. I've got, lots of really cool stuff inside of this Jupyter Lab, okay, which I can launch directly from my computer. Here's my clusters, one with 4 nodes. And you can see that I've got some actively run code. I've got, this one is, kind of click on there. We've got some limits because I've kind of set some limits on my Azure environment. I can kind of uncheck the quotas or increase my quotas to get more resources. I've got my attached compute if I wanted to add in, for example, Kubernetes clusters or Synapse Spark Engine clusters, VMs, lots of options. Azure Databricks, awesome data science environments and Spark clusters in there. Again, notebooks can be run in there with as well. So we kind of have lots of services, lots of capabilities inside of the Azure Machine Learning Service. And so to get to this point, we basically went into my Azure, what's going to go and, where was it? Did I close it out? Probably, let me go and close that one out. Portal.azure. Portal.azure. Helps if I can learn to type. After 20 years, I would have got the hang of it. Clearly, I've not had enough time in the industry yet. So here's the machine learning service that we created. One of the cool things I usually get asked is, So how much does this all cost? So we have our pricing calculator. And the lovely great thing about Azure Machine Learning Service is the service, kind of the workspace itself is kind of, let me go into this one here. So we want the one that looks like a kind of this icon, not the classic, okay, not the one with the globe on it. So we want this one, okay, here. So click on it, and this gives me the calculator to say how much it costs. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, here's the machine learning service, and the money is to do with the computes. Okay, so if I go with a really small, say a let's kind of say a DS2, 2 CPUs, 7 gig of RAM, 8.5 pennies in terms of UK money per hour. So £62 a month. If I was doing it in UK money, if I wanted to do it in dollars, actually kind of that, let's kind of do that. Yeah, lots of kind of changes here. Okay, now I've got the ability also to come savings if I wanted to kind of do it as a reservation. So pay-as-you-go is clearly the most expensive, kind of like your mobile phone. And if you buy a year's contract, etc., all that. Do we think Azure ML will replace the traditional data scientist role? So Azure ML, I would kind of say, is kind of the term that kind of used to kind of the technology. The data science role is you will be using ML. You'll be using machine learning. Whether it's Azure ML, whether it's a ML machine learning from, say, AWS or Google, it's using technology in something like Python notebooks or kind of some services like the Azure Machine Learning Service to create kind of those experiments and to analyze and do your kind of reviews on your data and to do kind of that kind of all the work that kind of needs to get done to kind of prepare the data and then to run it through experiments. Now, my session on Azure ML Ops will make this question a lot more deeper. We're able to answer it a lot more depth. And that is, you say the 13th of September. I'm gonna have to double check that is the schedule for it. And then my postcon is on, I think, the 19th and 20th December, so about a week later. But it'll be on the agenda. But yeah, you can see that all the cost is really down to the kind of, let me kind of get rid of this one here. Don't need this one, for example, and kind of get rid of a couple of these examples. So all we got is machine learning. And the only thing we're paying for is the compute. And the compute can be started and stopped. So although we're kind of paying 8.5p an hour for that one, or 17p an hour for one double the size, if you use it for an hour, you pay for an hour. If you turn it off and stop it, it's stopped. Now, some of the compute can be started and stopped. Some of it can only be kind of zoned down to a small usage. Okay, so kind of pausing or kind of not having inactivity, so kind of it shuts itself off when it's kind of not being used. And we have options around that. I want to go to all the details now because we're pretty much up on time a lot of time. So I want to kind of finish off with a few kind of recaps a little bit. Again, anything I'm showing you today will be covered again in the postcon and the other session. Is that this is the training class. So all the kind of details that we were talking about this afternoon as an intro is covered, as well as additional explaining visuals. So explain those graphs and how to interpret them and how to deploy those pipelines. Okay, so all that, remember this is kind of a very fast, quick run through. When we do the 8-hour kind of postcon, we take it through step by step. You'll be given access to Jupyter notebooks. You'll be given access to instructions on how to perform the same experiments in your own environment. The ones that we're doing today, kind of, or some similar to what we're doing today. Okay. There is, of course, many other kind of pre and post cons available. So I would say that if you look at them, there's some amazing ones out there. Take the opportunity, ask that boss for some training. So I found an awesome training, XYZ, let's go and see if we can get kind of locked on. Gives me access to the recordings in the summit, as well as the live attendance of the events as well. Some world leading trainers on these stuff that have been pulled together. So I'm going to be trying to get into to a few of them, as well as a whole bunch of them by Microsoft. So if you haven't kind of seen the sessions, you haven't seen the classes, have a look. Now there are, of course, other webinars coming up shortly. So they're, mine's today, but every couple of days there's a new one coming. So checking those as well. Okay, I'm going to say that we kind of went as fast as I could possibly go to cover as much content, but I didn't really have a huge amount of time to go through in lots of detail. But hopefully this has been a bit of a kind of tour for you to kind of get through. Let's kind of bring up that final kind of thank you. Kind of just quickly just grab that as well. So I will say, this is on YouTube. Follow the guys, Data Geeks and SQL Server Geeks on Twitter, or myself as well. I've got about 4,000 followers as well. Check out the portals, etc. And I'd love to see you in the upcoming sessions inside of DPS. And with that, I'm going to say any questions we might have that we haven't answered, now's the time. We've got a couple of minutes left. But otherwise, thank you for attending, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Neil, for giving your time today for the session. One question, the first question I see here is, does Azure ML support deep learning algorithms?
So we do. So Azure ML has some level of kind of algorithms that are kind of around deep learning. I would say them kind of go to the best way to do it is to go to the ML deep learning. Oh, can't spell deep learning either. Okay, so we basically got deep learning capabilities inside of Azure ML. So inside of ML, we have a subset, which is the deep learning neural networks that we have. So there are some neural networks inside of the machine learning space. The only neural networks we do really have, though, are under the design. Let me kind of open up. We have kind of waiting for it to load. And we want to go to deep. Sorry, we want neuro. That's it. Neuro. So we have these neural networks available inside of the designer, which is the multi-class and the two-class kind of neural networks. I would say that kind of those are the two that you would probably mostly use. But again, kind of just do a search inside of the machine learning documentation. And that's where I kind of also, when I first want to know something, I go into the Azure machine learning documentation. And then I go and search in here. So I'm looking at deep learning here. And I will go and find the deep learning resources that are available inside of the kind of algorithms. Okay. So it depends. There is something like a data science VM, which is probably something you want to provision up that has built in data science specific neural network hardware infrastructure that is specifically designed for doing neural network algorithms.
Okay, perfect. So we have the next question. Do you think, so this is from Swananand, he says, he's asking, do you think Azure ML will replace the traditional data scientist job?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit and said, look, kind of, it is really a case of Azure ML is a tool. It's an access to resources like compute, the designer, the notebooks, etc., automated ML that's going to help the data scientists to do their job. And their job is to kind of use the right tools and access data and do all that kind of stuff to kind of create the experiments. So yeah, by all means, Azure ML is going to be an excellent tool set for data scientists to use.
With this, Neil, thank you so very much for joining us once again. And we look forward to hosting you once again at DPS 2021.
Awesome. I look forward to it, and I'll be kind of making sure we're ready to go for the next one and then the postcard.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil. Have a
Sure.
good day. And friends, thank you so much. See you. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.